What's up everybody, Zach here, Seth, here from Throttle Addiction. Some of you guys may remember about a year ago we bought this 2001 Sportster with the intent of cutting it up, doing a little video showing you guys how to put our hardtail Sportster kit on there. And we're about a year later, we're finally getting to it. You know, 2020 was a rough year for everybody, so don't hold it against us. But today we are going to tear into this thing, and our goal is to show you that within a day, if you really get after it, you can tear these things down, get your frame welded on using the kit, frame, hardtail, oil tank, sissy bar, put it back together, and be down the road in minimal time. So with this, the caveat to that is we're going to kind of reuse as much as we can on this bike. Now it's not going to come out the prettiest. There's certain things that if you really want to build a nice clean chopper, you want to dump and throw some of that stuff out. But we're going to reuse the tank, try to get the oil lines fit up, all that stuff, just to say, hey, if I got a weekend and I don't want my bike to be down that long, you can do it that way and then maybe fix up those little issues after as you go along later down the road. So with that, let's get into it. It is, what is it? What time is it, Seth?
8:24.
8:24 in the morning. We are going to jump on this and we'll keep you guys updated as we go along. All right, so first thing, we're gonna pull off the tanks and fenders. When you're using, or when you're doing your build, if trying to recoup some money, and they're in good shape, you usually get a few $100 for those, sell them on eBay, so we'll pull those off. We are gonna reuse the tank to get this thing running, but we'll get those off, get the seat off, then we're gonna attack kind of the exhaust, the rear tire. We're gonna pull the front end off as complete as we can, because in this case, we're just gonna throw it back on today so we can get it down the road. You can switch out your bars and all that stuff later. Obviously, these aren't the most ideal configuration for kind of the look we're going for, so we will get after it. Luckily, this seat here is placed strategically for show. I'm gonna undo this imaginary bolt. Oh, look at that. Seats off, folks. Part one done. We're underway. All right, let's go.
And pull our front fender off here. In this instance, we will not be reusing our front fender. Beautiful.
All right, so we're gonna get the tank off here. So first thing, obviously we turn our fuel off. We're just gonna clip our fuel line down here because it's a little bit of a bugger to get those out well around the motor mount and all that. So, and we got a little jug. We're gonna lose a little fuel here. Get that off. 1, 2. And that's about it. So you're gonna have your 2 bolts here to get your tank free.
There are nuts on the backside.
Highly suggest that you put a custom universal, something smaller tank on there. Just gonna give you a much better look.
And the last thing before we pull it off, down here on the bottom right here, you got a vent hose. You gotta pop that guy off. And anything you take out, if you can stick it back in its original hole, is just gonna make your life way easier on the back end.
All right, tank's off. Set this over here for safekeeping. All right, now's a good time to pull the exhaust off. We're gonna get that out of there. You need some sockets and some long extensions to get in here. Sometimes on different bikes, you'll either have, some people will run nuts or bolts all the way up in there into the heads. It should just be a stud that comes out with a nut, 2 on each side, and then some mounting points down here. Got it.
So if you're lucky enough to have a nice lift like we have here, I would recommend raising it prior to taking things off. So we're gonna go ahead and stop and do that now.
I was just so excited to get after it, Seth. I never really thought about that.
We were way too excited.
All right, resuming. Now we're gonna move to the back. Pretty straightforward. Got those out on the heads. Now we're gonna have a couple brackets or bolts off of the hanger down here. Get in there and loosen this. There she goes. Out she comes. This guy says put everything back on so you don't lose it, and then what does he do?
Well, that's good there. So now we're gonna take the air cleaner carburetor off. We're separating the front end from the frame, so we're gonna have to get our throttle cables off anyways. So now is a good time to do this. Obviously, if you got an aftermarket air cleaner, this will look a little different, but kind of the same concept. Pop our outer cover off here. And we're gonna pull the air cleaner itself off. So your crankcase breather plugs here, just a little rubber push in, guys. You're gonna pop those off, set them aside. Not even close. I can't not swear, I don't know what to tell you. I got the air cleaner off. Next thing we're gonna take off is our carburetor. Get our throttle cables separated so when we pull the front end off, they're out of the way as well. So first thing we're gonna do, get some slack in our cables, pull our boots down. Now we're gonna jump over to the other side and undo our choke so we can pull that through, leaving it attached to the carburetor. Make it a little easier here. So a little 11/16 nut on the back there. Try to sneak in there. Loosen that guy up just a little bit. Comes right out. We've already got our fuel line disconnected from the tank. So back to the other side. So these just press fit into your intake. Your air cleaner is what actually holds it back in there. So just give her a little wiggle here. She'll pop right off. With it coming our fuel hose and our choke somewhere. There's our choke, we'll feed that through. Get it pulled up. Down here is your overflow tube. You can just pull it right back out. Doesn't connect to anything down below. Next thing we got here is our vacuum line coming off the carb, which goes to your petcock as well as your Vose. This one's a little rotten nasty. We'll probably replace some of that when we go back together. There she is, free in our hands. Last thing here are our throttle cables. We got the slack pulled out of them. So we're just gonna pull up on her here, get it out of the slot, let it drop down. Do the same with the idle cable. Now we got our cables out of our holder there. There's a little notch, just slide it to that notch. This one you're gonna have to pull your throttle a little bit. Slide that guy out. So now our throttle cables are separated. They're good to go with the front end. Carb is off. All right, one thing I want to explain real quick. We get a few questions when people are changing tanks, changing things around, or kind of our vacuum lines here. So the vacuum's created from this nipple off the carburetor right here, your intake, and then splits off. One hose goes to your Vose, which controls your vacuum advance for your ignition. A lot of guys eliminate this. I personally recommend just keeping it if you're not going to update ignition and things of that nature. So this hose right here is your other vacuum line, which actually goes to your petcock, which is right over here. Right here is this nipple. So what this guy does is when your fuel tank is in the on position, it actually will not run fuel out there until this sees vacuum. So a couple things to note: if you're eliminating the vacuum operated petcock, going with an aftermarket tank, aftermarket petcock, you will not have this vacuum nipple here. So in that case, you're gonna eliminate this T here, and all you're gonna be running is straight from the Vose sensor to your carburetor intake.
And manifold. You got the carburetor backwards, right?
Yes, so, yeah, this way.
It's on the back of the intake.
On the back of the intake, right here. If you are eliminating your Vose, and your vacuum operated petcock, getting rid of both of those. This has to be capped. You can't leave this open to atmosphere, can't just hook a hose to it. This has to be capped.
Okay, at this point we are gonna pull the rear tire. We'll get that out, and then we're gonna go and get the fender out. There's a couple of nuts on the back side of the fender mount and some electric components that are mounted to the fender. So once we get that out, then we can tackle kind of this region and start pulling out wires, move on to brakes and all that, and in no time we'll be down to a frame. All right, on this side you're gonna have a cotter pin here on the nut. Get that kind of, there we go. That's out. And put this on there, 15/16. You can loosen up your axle adjusters here. Give you some. I should say too, at this point, down in the bottom of the comments or the video section there, you'll see a link that'll take you to our web page, and we'll have all the products that we talk about and use on here on a web page specific, so you can get any of those. All right, so then the other thing I want to talk a little bit about is rear wheel spacing and how that works with the components. So our hardtail frame here, between your axle plates, is going to keep the exact same spacing as the stock Harley swing arm. So if we swing over here, kind of show you how that works. Again, if you're using this caliper, this portion of the bracket acts as a spacer. So you're going to have axle plate on the hardtail, then the brake caliper, then you got this spacer that goes in there, then you're going to have wheel, assuming this again is all assuming you're keeping your stock rear wheel that was on the bike. Then we got a fat spacer on the right side and through the X plate. The other thing, if you come back here, so we have a swing arm which has some width here, obviously on the back of the swing arm. Our axle plates don't have that width. They maintain the same inner dimension, but since the swing arm is, a tube frame construction, it's wider, axle is appropriately wide for that. So what you can do, now some guys will want to buy a custom axle that's maybe ½ inch, 3/4 inch shorter, which will account for the loss of the tube when you're switching to just flat axle plates. That's fine, that's great, that's a clean way to do it. But if you come over to our frame, we still got to have, move this, we still got to have something for your axle adjusters, which are right here, to push against. So you can push against the head or the nut, that works. But if we're trying to use everything and get down the road clean and quick, these just pop out the back, and you have these little spacers right there. You can cut this little portion off, and then when you put it through on the frame here, put that through there, and you have this little width here, and that gives a spot that your axle adjusters can press against. So again, cut that off, and you can use these spacers on the outside and the inside of your stock axle. And then all the other stuff inside fits as it was when you took it off your bike. So.
All right, now that we got the rear tire out of the way, we're gonna continue on, take our fender off. We do have our brake tail light still hooked up, wired, so we're gonna undo all that fun stuff. A couple other things we got to get out of the way to get the fender off. The blinkers are already pulled off. If you had those on at this point, your wires would still be in there, so you can pull all that stuff as well with the tire out of there. Makes your life a little easier. So first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna come up in here, undo this wiring connection right here, which goes back to your tail light and brake light. Way down in here is a little plastic holder that holds this wire to the oil tank. We got to get that guy undone. Pull that wire out of there, that way it's free to follow the fender. Next thing we're gonna do is unhook our little light module there unhook that connector. So now that will stay with the fender. We got this one here staying with the fender. We're gonna unbolt her and get her pulled off. So I do, just a note, I have a couple bolts, nuts off of them, but the bolt's in there just holding things, so when I pull this guy out, she doesn't fall to the ground. Pop these two guys out. Slip her right out of there. Fender's off, out of the way, got a little access here. We're gonna attack some things on this side of the bike. We're gonna get our battery out of the way, cables undone, get the battery tray gone, pull this side tin off, get some of this stuff ready, make some access to get our oil tank and all that crap out of the way. First of all, assuming you still have your battery cover and all this fun stuff, we're gonna pop this little 7/16 guy off here. Alright, once you get that side loose, push down on the other side, pop that guy rack off, battery top comes off, slide the battery cover off. Those things get lost all the time, so they're an easy thing to sell. So this is always a little tricky. First thing, you want to start with your negative post. If you start with your positive post and you hit something, it's going to arc, do a little battery welding. So we're going to sneak in here with our 10mm. Get our negative post off. Sometimes you can pull the battery out a little bit if you have enough slack on your cables to make life a little easier. This one's a little tight, so we're just going to suffer through. Pull off our positive cable. Almost got you. Might have to edit that out. We got the battery out of there. Pop this little cover off. We will not be using this. Alright, so now we're going to attack our battery box here, get it out of the way. There's a bunch of bolts behind the nuts, behind there that hold your oil tank on. So there's 1, 2, 3 here, and then this little guy down on bottom with your rubber isolator. So we are going to start with this bottom guy here. Before we pull that last one, drag this back up so we can feed our cables through. Throw that aside, not gonna need that. And then we're gonna bounce around to the back here quick. And this little module right here is mounted to the battery tray, so we're gonna get that loosened up. Last battery tray bolt. And we do have a little wire clip up top holding some wires on. Yours may or may not still have this. Got that undone. Now we are free to pull that battery tray off.
Alright, so now we are going to pull our sprocket cover. We're going to take this off because we have to change our belt, or you're going to put it on a chain drive conversion. So one way or another, this has to come off. So let's pull that. We'll get our rear master cylinder out. We're going to try to save this. We're going to see if we can't shoehorn these brake lines in there. Like I said, get down the road fast. We're going to see what we can do with these. So we're going to take that off in one piece. And prior to that, we're going to pull the oil tank and get our oil lines disconnected, because the kit does come with a new oil tank. So first things first, best to just drain your oil out of the tank, because as soon as you pull those oil lines, it's gonna start spewing everywhere. So real easy now that you got the wheel out. Here's your drain line down there. So it's just got a hose and it kind of clamps off to the frame. That out, and voila, she starts rolling. Pull the cap, and we'll let that drain. Looks like we're getting rid of some nice oil. All right, so we got our oil draining very, very slowly because we did not warm it up, but letting that drain, and we're gonna start pulling this stuff. There she goes. There we go. So this one has a nut on the back. As you can see, I was cranking on that one. That one is not gonna come off. There's a nut on the back. This bottom one, you look here, there's your shaft with this nut we loosened earlier when we took our exhaust off. So you're gonna have 1, 2, 3 down there, and then that. This nut and bolt, Allen head and bolt stays on there. That support bracket will stay on there. Okay, we got the cover off. Now we can get our belt out. We're not gonna be able to fully pull it out because there's a bunch of junk on here. And since we're just cutting this all off on the frame, we're not really gonna worry about our shocks, swing arm, belt guard, that stuff's, it's all just getting cut off. So we're not gonna spend the time taking care of that. So we'll just swing our old belt back out of the way. You can harvest that later. We'll pull our oil lines. So side cutters works well to kind of break these tabs loose. And throw those away. This top one here is our vent and return on the bottom, the larger one. There we go. Okay. All right, so then on this side, this is your drain, or this is your feed and your drain. So down here on the bottom, there's a T on this line. This stuff is all kind of goofy, real specific to that. So we can just cut these. We're not gonna be reusing any of that. So let's hack through that one. There we go. And down here. I don't know if I'll be able to get in, or let's see. There we go. There we go. Hole. This hole. Fun assembly out. Okay, so now we got all our lines disconnected. We can pull the oil tank and get that out of the way. If you look, we have you have 1, 2. These are on isolators, so you get 2 nuts here and 1 back here. Just pull those and come right out.
Just like that. One more $20 eBay part.
This is your vent to the gas tank. So that's strapped to the frame like that. A lot of aftermarket gas tanks are not going to have that vent. Since we're going to use the stock one, we'll probably find a way to put it on there. Otherwise, you can plug the tube or plug the gas tank. All right, so now we are going to try to get our entire brake caliper set up through here to get that out of there and just keep it all as one piece. So we'll pull the peg, the mount, this will come off, and we should in theory be able to slide it right through there and get it out of our way. Every peg setup is going to be different. All right, so over here, here's our brake line. It's kind of a mix of a hard line and a soft line on your brake hose. So what I would suggest, best way to do it, cleanest, is to just go with an aftermarket brake line, something flexible that you can get back to where it needs to be, and just run in an inline brake switch, Goodrich or something like that. We sell those, they're $20-some. Kind of gets rid of this big clunky thing. So we're gonna try to see if we can make this work. Maybe manipulate these hard lines a little bit and see if we can't get it mounted up. So again, using all the parts that we can, and see if we can make something look good with what we have. So we'll pull these out and fish the rest of our rear brake components back through here. Okay, so this is our brake switch, the brake light switch. It's got a little rubber boot on it, which feed it down. Don't go clipping all these wires, there's no need to right now. And now, our rear brake system is out in one piece. Hopefully we didn't crack anything. Theoretically, we should be all good and bled still, so. All right, we're wrapping up video 1 on disassembly of this 4-part series, so hit video 2, and then we'll hardtail this thing and get it back together. And like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
And go to throttleaddiction.com to buy all your parts. Because otherwise Seth will have to go back to selling his semen. And there's a lot of children around that he's fathered illegitimately. Throttleaddiction.com.